This is Change Your Mindset Podcast, the podcast that helps change your life by helping change the mindset of the 99% into the 1% mindset. Here's your host, Adrian Gomez.
Welcome back to another podcast episode of Change Your Mindset. As always, I'm your host, Adrian Gomez. This is a movie called Whiplash. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. And just letting you know, it's going to be spoilers because I'm going to read you the synopsis of the movie. And the reason I'm going over this movie is because there's different ways people view this movie. Some people say that's a great movie. Others will say the teacher, the instructor, was cruel and abusive and harsh. And the small majority, as myself, see it totally different. I see it as the sacrifice, how much you need to be pushed, the limit you need to be pushed, and once you're at that limit, how you need to surpass that limit to not just to succeed, but to reach your full potential. And that's why I see in this movie. And as I read you the summary, I tell you from the beginning to the end of the movie, so is the sacrifice you have to make, the obstacles you have to go through, literally the blood, sweat, and tears you have to go through to succeed, to reach your full potential, and to have someone push you beyond your limits. Because sometimes when you reach your limits, that isn't good enough. You need to go beyond your limits. So I'm reading you this synopsis, and maybe you can come to your own conclusion. But like I said, I highly recommend this movie to see what it takes to be pushed past your limits to achieve greatness. So here's the summary. The film opens with Andrew Neiman, who is played by Miles Teller, playing the drums at Safford Conservatory of Music, the music school in USA, and he's just an alternate drummer in some school band. Andrew abruptly stops playing drums when the band conductor, Terrence Fletcher, played by J.K. Simmons, appears at the door in front of him and asking Andrew some personal information of him. When Fletcher asks Andrew why he stopped playing, he resumes playing drums. After he finishes playing, Terrence says he did not mean to resume playing. Then he asks Andrew to show his rudiments by playing the drums again. While Andrew plays drums, Fletcher slams the door, but he comes back to retrieve his forgotten jacket. The next day, Andrew enters one class aside from Fletcher and there. He meets a drummer named Ryan Conley, played by Austin Stowell, and shortly the professor arrives and the class performs Billy's Ann. Andrew sees the man, presumably Fletcher, in silhouette looking at the door. After the class, Andrew peeks into one of the classrooms where the class is handled by Fletcher, and he is being looked at by Fletcher. Later, back at the studio band, Andrew is playing drums as core drummer. Suddenly, Fletcher breaks inside and Andrew becomes horrified of him. Fletcher conducts every saxophonist and bassist one by one, and finally the drums. After that, Fletcher tells Andrew to come, and he is told to come at his room tomorrow at 6 in the morning. Andrew meets Nicole, the girl working at the cinema, and invites her to go out with him. The next day, Andrew realizes that he is late for class. Andrew struggles and rushes quickly to the school. Only he goes inside the empty classroom. Andrew knows the class actually starts at 9 a.m. Andrew waits 3 hours before the class. At exactly 9 a.m., Fletcher arrives and begins conducting the song called Whiplash. During the band practice, Fletcher confronts, then suddenly yells at a saxophonist named Metz, playing out of tune, and angrily tells him to get out of the studio band. This escalates Fletcher's abusiveness and wrath. Fletcher has the class take a break. Fletcher and Andrew have a conversation about his life and family. After the break, the class resumes, but when Fletcher loses his patience of Andrew's drum tempo, Fletcher throws a chair at Andrew, but he dodges it. Fletcher slaps Andrew every 4 in 12 counts he makes and he will not stop questioning until Andrew answers whether he is dragging or rushing. Andrew answers rushing, then Fletcher forces Andrew to tell the whole band that he is upset louder. Fletcher then mocks Andrew about his parents being separated. Once again, Fletcher tells Andrew that he is upset louder. Thus, Andrew is being embarrassed and insulted. At his home, Andrew keeps practicing drums, making his hand bleed in the process. After the band performs at the competition, Tanner, core drummer, gives his music sheets to Andrew. Andrew neglects the music sheets to buy a can of Coke at the automated vending machine. As Tanner is looking for his music sheets, they mysteriously disappear. Tanner can't play without the sheets. Andrew steps in, stating he knows the song, Whiplash by heart. Andrew plays well and earns Tanner's spot. Thus, Andrew is the new core drummer. Andrew's family is having dinner at his home and talks about his experience in Shaffer. At the studio band, the band is practicing the new song called Caravan, which needs an extreme time stamp measure of 330 BPM. Fletcher dismisses the band except Andrew when Fletcher discusses him about that note. Shortly, Ryan Conley, whom Andrew met from the other class, arrives. Andrew plays the drums to test the ability of the tempo, but his tempo fails while Ryan plays well. Therefore, Fletcher takes Ryan as a new core drummer, but Andrew does not agree to this. Jealous, Andrew will be the core drummer if he earns the part. Andrew breaks up with Nicole, saying his ambition will only hinder their relationship. At his home, we see Andrew practicing drums harder with a pitcher of water with ice beside him in case he bleeds. As he fails to reach the required tempo, Andrew punches a drum in frustration and his hand is bleeding, dripping it in the pitcher of ice. At the studio band, Fletcher tearfully reveals in class that a talented former student of his, Sean Casey, has died in a car accident. The band rehearses Caravan, but Carl Tanner struggles with the tempo. Fletcher auditions Andrew, Ryan, and Tanner for hours while the class waits outside, but the three fail to reach the required tempo. When it is now Andrew's turn, Fletcher kicks the chair, then throws the drum away in wrath, and even tells Andrew to increase the tempo. In this process, Andrew's left hand is bleeding, and the blood drips onto the drum set. After a 1 minute of playing, Fletcher finally tells Andrew that he earned the part. On the way to a jazz competition, the bus that Andrew rode breaks down, so Andrew rents a car, but he arrives late for a rehearsal, without his drumsticks. He drives back to the car rental office and retrieves the drumsticks, but as he speeds back, his car is hit by a truck. He crawls from the wreckage, and despite his injury and bloodied face, he struggles to make it into the jazz competition. With his left hand injured, he is unable to play and drops the drumstick to the floor. After that, Fletcher says Andrew that he is done. Andrew attacks Fletcher in front of the audience. Andrew is expelled from Shaffer and contacted by a lawyer representing the parents of Sean Casey. The lawyer explains that Sean actually hanged himself, having suffered anxiety and depression after joining Fletcher's class. Sean's parents want to prevent Fletcher from teaching. Andrew agrees to testify, and Fletcher is fired. Andrew goes to the club, where he sees Fletcher and the jazz performers. As the song ends, Andrew walks out of the club, but Fletcher calls him, and having a chat with Fletcher, Fletcher explains that he pushes his students beyond the expected so they might achieve greatness. He invites Andrew to perform at a JVC festival concert with his band. Andrew agrees and invites Nicole, learning that she has a new relationship. The day of the JV festival concert, while Andrew is on stage, Fletcher tells Andrew he knows he testified against him, and in revenge, leads the band in a new piece Andrew was not given a sheet music for. Andrew leaves the stage humiliated, but returns and begins playing Caravan, interrupting Fletcher as he addresses the audience. The rest of the band joins him, and Fletcher follows suit. Andrew ends the performance with an extravagant drum solo. Fletcher is at first angry, but gives a nod of approval to Andrew as he finishes his solo. And the movie ends after that. The summary doesn't do the movie justice. You would have to see the movie to see the actual harassment, the abuse, and like I said, the blood, sweat, and tears Andrew had to go through. But why am I talking about this movie? The average person will never achieve the full potential. They will never achieve their greatness. Reason why? For the character Andrew in the movie, he was verbally abused, he was cussed at, physically abused, having chairs thrown at him. He was emotionally abused, and the average person going through all that, they would have quit, they would have gave up, they would have stopped, and they would have never reached their full potential. But the small majority that pushes through, like Andrew did, makes it to the full potential. Because at the end of the movie, Andrew, after going through all that, he didn't give up. He eventually made it through, and he had one of the greatest drum solos ever. And if he didn't get pushed by his teacher Fletcher, he would have never made it to that point. He would never have made it to his full potential. He would have never been pushed to greatness. But this just shows you the limits, the blood, sweat, and tears that you have to go through to go beyond your limit. That's what it takes. Like I said, the average person would have quit, would have gave up. And that's what makes them average. And they'll never be great. They will never reach their full potential. And the average person that sees that movie will never understand. Because they don't know what it takes to achieve that level. Because nowadays, everyone's sensitive, everyone complains, everyone whines, everyone's weak. And of course, everyone is lazy. And it's so easy to quit instead of keep pushing through the tough times. And this isn't made for everybody. Not everyone is meant to go to the top. Not everyone is meant to be great. Only very few. And it's going to depend on how bad you want it. When the times get tough, are you going to quit or are you going to give up? Or you can be that 1%er and get through it to reach your greatness, to reach your full potential. And that's why I think this movie, Whiplash, is such a great movie. It shows all the obstacles he had to go through, that Andrew went through, all the abuse that people would say he had to go through, just to achieve at the very end his full potential, and how much he had been pushed beyond his limits to reach his full potential. That's why I think this movie is so great, because it shows you the struggles just to get to the top. Because everyone thinks it's so easy and quick to reach the top. It's not. So there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, more downs than ups. But eventually, you'll reach to the top. And if you have somebody, and in this case Fletcher, to push you to your limit, because they know you can be great. But some people need to be pushed. Others don't need to be pushed. They push themselves. But everyone's different. There's very few people that don't need anybody. They can do it on their own. But there's others that need somebody to push them to achieve their greatness. Depends on the person. Like I said, everyone's different. Everyone's built different. But at the end of the day, you still can reach the top, no matter what. We're all created the same, but it depends how bad you want it, how much you want to work than the other person. I highly recommend the movie if you see it. It's a great movie. Obviously, it's not for people that are very sensitive. There is profanity, people want to say abuse, if you want to call it that. But at the end of the day, this shows a good struggle that person has to go through to come out on top. And that's what it's all about. Because life's not easy. It will never be easy. Life's tough. When life gets tough and knocks you down, are you going to let it defeat you? Or are you going to get back up and keep going? Overall, it's a great movie. Like I said, it shows what people talk about. Blood, sweat, and tears. To reach your goals, your dreams, and your full potential. That's what this movie symbolizes. And it also symbolizes the sacrifices you have to make as well. Personal sacrifices. That's going to be it for this podcast episode. As always, I appreciate your time because I know time is very important. We only get so much of it. And I appreciate your time to listen to this podcast. Thank you, Patron member Blade262, for being a Patron member and supporting the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or topic you want me to go over for another podcast episode, you can do that by being a Patreon member. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and share with other people if you find these podcast episodes beneficial to you, and it can be beneficial to someone else. And it does help the podcast grow as well. More than I can do by myself. Thank you again. I wish you all the best, success, and go out there and be the best versions of yourself. Take care and be safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Change Your Mindset podcast. Be sure to tune in every week for a new episode. As always, change your mindset to change your life.